Let's move on to what we're going to do, guys. Close. Listen up. Ladies and gentlemen. Listen up. We're going to close the laptops. It is right. I don't know. I'll look at it later. Okay. We're going to close the laptops and push your books to the side. We're going to get into the cell cycle right now. Once we get through this, if there's time at the end, you can finish your lab, finish your homework. If we don't have time, take it home and do it as homework tonight. I'll give you another day, okay? So you need your notebooks. We're going to take notes. If you need paper, there's some in the red basket, okay? Has anybody ever heard of the cell cycle? Okay, so here's your little, we're going to just talk about this. You don't have to write this down. So your do now question. How does a baby grow from an infant state to adulthood? And why does your skin peel off after you have a bad sunburn? Does anybody have any idea? What do you think? I didn't hear you. Your cells burn. So you get a sunburn and your skin is damaged. It peels off and you get new skin back, right? Why does that happen? Because your tissue is growing. How does a baby grow? So you guys all started out as little itty bitty babies, and now you're about as tall as you're probably going to be. How did that happen?
Your bones grow.
Your bones grow, that's true. Every single cell in your body goes through what's called the cell cycle. In the cell cycle, your cells divide. So it starts as one cell, it divides in half, and you have two cells. It's doing that constantly, okay? So write your do nows. Your answers to both of these is cell division. Cell division, cell duplication.
Write the question too?
Yeah. So babies grow from infant to adulthood because your bone cells are multiplying and they're dividing, and that makes your bones grow bigger because all those cells have to go somewhere, right? And same with your muscle cells. Some cells divide faster than others.
What you saying? What's the answer?
Cell division. So what we're going to go through right now is called the cell cycle. Is everybody done with this?
No.
And we're going to talk about the cell cycle and the different stages of it, and then I'll show you an animation that shows you exactly what happens during the cell cycle. You want one of these desks?
I never had something.
You guys done?
What's the answer to that one and two?
Cell division. So before we were talking about cells and cell respiration happening inside of cells. Now we're going to talk about how the cells multiply. Are you ready? You ready, Cheyenne? Okay. Well, maybe we'll talk about it. Hold on, because my PowerPoint stopped working. So here's your first slide. In the cell cycle, there's three main phases. There's three stages, okay? We have what's called interphase. These three stages are important to remember. We have interphase. That's where the cell just is kind of existing. It's doing its job. It's growing a little bit. DNA replication happens during interphase. And then we have mitosis. So we take the double DNA and it grows into 2 cells and it splits in half. That's cytokinesis. So we have interphase, mitosis where the DNA splits into 2 nuclei, and cytokinesis where the one cell actually splits into 2 daughter cells. Okay? The reason we do this is because cells are dying every day. Write these 3 things, the 3 stages in the cell cycle. So every day, we have between 50 and 100 million trillion cells. So that's bigger than a billion, that's bigger than a trillion. 100 million trillion cells, and every minute you're producing about 300 million new cells. Here, do you want to take this? The reason we do that our hair is growing, our fingernails are growing, our organ cells are getting older and they're dying and new ones are being produced. That's how we stay alive. If we stop doing cell division, if we stop having the cell cycle, we stop living. So just make sure on this slide you have the 3 phases. You can put the numbers of cells that we have if you like, if that interests you. But the most important part are the 3 phases. And we'll talk about each phase in a minute. Do you need a new piece of paper? Yeah. So there's some words on here that you'll see pretty often. You'll see mitosis. That in and of itself has a lot of different steps. We'll learn about that separately. Cytokinesis. Cyto means cell. Kinesis means divide. So in science, anytime you see a word that begins with C-Y-T-O, it's talking about a cell. Anytime you see a word that has kinesis in it, it means it's splitting in half. It's dividing. Interphase, you can think of that as a phase. It's like in between DNA replication and the cell dividing. It's just kind of hanging out. The cell is growing. There's some other things that happen in interphase, but there's not a whole heck of a lot going on. Cells spend about 95% of their life cycle in interphase. We still writing? So you'll see as we go through this, you're probably asking me, why are we learning about cell division? Who really cares? This has a lot to do with cancer research, believe it or not. Because does anybody know what cancer is? Cancer is simply uncontrolled cell division. A tumor is just a mass of cells that went rogue and they keep dividing and dividing and dividing and they have no job. That's all it is. So if you can understand the cell cycle and mitosis, you can understand how to cure cancer. That's why they've been able to make so many different discoveries about how to cure breast cancer, ovarian cancer, because cells have little receptor sites on the outside that either, they like send messages out that say, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, and if it's not what it's supposed to be doing, we can create inventions that shut those cells up and kill them. That's what cancer research is. Are we ready yet?
No.
Give me a heads up when you're done, because I know there's a lot of stuff up there.
We're supposed to write the 3 stages, right?
Write 3 stages, yeah. If you want to know how many cells you have, you can write that.
There's trillion,
50.
number, million, trillion.
100 million trillion. I can't even think, like 1,000 trillion would be a quadrillion.
Millions already.
So 100 million trillion, that's like 6 decimal places, or 6 spaces after a trillion.
A million, trillion.
Cytokinesis. Who's still working? Mr. Blue, can you hear me with your headphones in?